What does it look like when almost 30 years of marriage, faith, vows, and a large family crumble into betrayal and legal combat? On one side, Christine Brown, a woman who escaped polygamy to protect herself and her children. On the other, Kody Brown, a father desperate to preserve his vision of the family. In a Flagstaff courtroom, the past and present come crashing together: custody battles, financial altercations, and claims of emotional abandonment. Today, we lift the veil on the courtroom war that destroyed the Brown family once and for all. The pre-dawn sky above Flagstaff, Arizona, was colored in heavy, thick clouds, the kind that seemed to weigh down on the earth itself. The wind was chilly, but the atmosphere had a tacit weight, an unarticulated tension that nobody could identify but everybody sensed. Across the sidewalk in front of the courthouse, a small group had formed. Some sipped coffee, others carried cameras. They were there for only one reason: to see the next installment in the disintegration of the Brown family. A court fight between Christine Brown and Kody Brown that would yield secrets no confessionals on reality television ever had. Christine's black SUV arrived at the curb as the courthouse clock hit 9. She got out slowly, almost ritualistically, her deep green dress flowing lightly in the wind. It wasn't a matter of color, it was a statement. Green for growth, for self-reliance, for the new beginning she had worked out for herself after all those years of existing in the shadow of a man who, as far as she was concerned, had long since ceased to be her companion. Her attorney, an eagle-eyed woman in a black suit, accompanied her, chipping in a few final words Christine didn't appear to require. Her expression was serene, but her eyes blazed with determination. She had walked out on Kody once before. This time, she wasn't merely walking away. She was standing firm. Within the courthouse, things changed. Greetings were whispered, phones were placed on silent. Every head turned to watch Christine walk into the room and sit at the plaintiff's table. She set her bag down beside her chair, smoothed out her skirt, and folded her hands together on the table. She didn't glance at the door, but she didn't need to. She could sense when he entered. Kody Brown stepped in with the same deliberated bravado fans had been seeing on Sister Wives for years, though it was muted now, like a once vibrant flame deprived of air. He was dressed in a navy suit, his blonde ringlets tucked neatly back, but the firm set of his jaw betrayed the tempest churning beneath the surface. Behind him, Robyn Brown sat in the first row, her face tightly masked, her fingers clasped together in her lap. Some were convinced they caught a flash of fear in her eyes. Others believed defiance. Whatever it was, she never looked away from Christine. The bailiff brought the court to order, and Judge Amelia Carter, a woman with a reputation for being tough and having a keen mind for the law, sat down at the bench. She didn't delay today's proceedings. She started off, her voice slicing sharp through the tension. "We'll deal with the custody of Truly Brown, the division of jointly owned properties, brought about by the spiritual union of the parties, and the payment of contested financial obligations towards the upbringing, education, and medical care of the child." Christine straightened up in her chair, her gaze fixed on the judge. Kody shifted, one leg draped over the other, glancing for a moment at his lawyer. Christine's attorney rose, her tone firm and clear. "Your Honor, my client committed close to 30 years of her life to a marriage that was promised to be a partnership. What she received was her raising 6 children with little emotional and financial input from a man who professed family as his core belief, but only ever kept one house as priority over the others." The words hit like a punch. Even the gallery members who attempted to remain impartial were caught by the cutting edge of the remark. Robyn's mouth set into a thin line, and Kody's jaw clenched. Christine's lawyer went on, describing a situation of years of neglect and promises unkept. She explained how Christine had been left out of family decisions, how her voice was overridden in the cause of family unity that seemed to be always geared towards benefiting Kody and Robyn's home. She talked of financial struggles Christine went through by herself, even while the family taped a reality show bringing in regular income. She talked of birthdays missed, graduations missed, and surgeries where Christine waited alone in hospital rooms, holding her children's hands while their father was elsewhere. Kody's attorney shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. For now, Christine remained frozen, her mask of control fixed on her face, but her hands tightening on the table when her lawyer spoke of Truly. The sixth and youngest of her 6 children, Truly was merely 11 years old when the breakup started. She was now old enough to comprehend that her parents' relationship was more than merely complicated. It was irreparably broken. The lawyer's tone softened when she explained Truly's requirements. My client is not requesting that she exclude her father from their daughter's life. She is requesting an environment that provides stability, emotional security, and predictable support, something that hitherto has been at best inconsistent. The judge nodded, making some brief notes. Next came Kody. His attorney got up, fastening the suit jacket. His tone was deliberate, but the underlying current was clear. This would be a battle. Your Honor, he started. My client has been and always has been a devoted father and provider. He has been misrepresented in the press, and even by his own family members. We will show that Miss Brown's version of events is not just wrong, but profoundly injurious to the health and well-being of their daughter. Kody leaned forward and put his flat hands on the table. I've done everything I could to be present for my children, he said, his tone restrained but firm. But Christine has constructed a wall between me and them. She's alienated them from me. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Christine did not blink, her gaze still on the judge. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Brown, you will have the chance to fully testify later. Let's get opening arguments on the record. The rest of the morning was a game of chess, both sides placing their pieces, not wanting to show too much too early. Christine's team did a little hinting about financial statements and emotional testimony that would reveal years of selective parenting. Kody's team threatened evidence of parental alienation and poor communication by Christine following the split. By lunchtime, the atmosphere in the courtroom was thicker than it had been that morning. The spectators in the gallery had stopped fidgeting in their seats. Their eyes were glued to the participants in this extremely public, extremely private war. As the judge adjourned for recess, Christine rose slowly, gathering her files. Kody stayed seated for an instant, his eyes fixed on her retreating back. It was impossible to gauge whether his expression was one of anger, remorse, or shock. On the steps outside, the courthouse was besieged by reporters. Cameras and microphones stood at attention in all directions, questions shooting out like arrows. Christine, do you think Kody's been a bad father? Kody, are you concerned about losing custody? Robyn, how much of this struggle is about you? Christine and Kody did not respond. They each went in the opposite direction, flanked by their respective crews, their trajectories parting ways, as they had done in life. But one thing was for sure, when they went back to that courtroom, the war would truly commence. And it wouldn't be merely over custody or assets. It would be over truth, image, and the destruction of a family which once set out to be invincible. The court was still quieting after the tension of the morning when Judge Amelia Carter summoned Christine Brown to take the stand. A low murmur rippled through the gallery as she stood from her chair, holding a slim folder against her chest. Each step down the aisle felt as if calculated, as if she were walking not only across the courtroom floor, but through each memory she'd struggled so desperately to leave behind. Christine was sworn in, her voice firm as she vowed to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. She sat down, fiddled with the microphone, and drew a long breath. Her attorney, Melissa Carter, unrelated to the judge, approached. Christine, Melissa started softly. Can you tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Brown in the years before you two were separated? Christine's eyes flashed momentarily toward Kody, then to her lawyer. Her tone was steady, but each word mattered. In the beginning, she told him, I believed in what we were creating. I believed in our marriage, in the plural family, but over time, it shifted. He shifted, and the oneness he talked about so much wasn't there. It was a performance. In the house, it was split. It was always split. Melissa moved in closer. When you say split, what do you mean? Christine's eyes fell to her clasped hands. I mean that there was one family, Robyn's family, that received his attention, his presence, and his resources. The rest of us, we were supposed to be understanding, to be patient. But patience doesn't raise children. Presence does. The judge took a note. Kody's jaw clenched as he shifted in his seat. Melissa went on. Can you provide concrete examples to the court? Christine nodded. She reached across the folder on her desk and drew out a small photo. The court monitor held it up for all to see. A photo of Truly at her 11th birthday party, sitting with a homemade birthday cake in front of her. To her left were her siblings, grinning for the photographer. There was one absence, Kody. On her second birthday 2 years ago, Christine spoke quietly. She asked if her dad was coming. I said he couldn't because he was busy, but really he was at another home, celebrating another child's birthday. He didn't even call until the day after. Kody leaned into his attorney, saying something under his breath. Robyn glared at the table in front of her. Melissa inquired, how did that impact Truly? Christine's voice trembled ever so slightly. She stopped asking. She stopped waiting for him. And when your child stops waiting for their parent to materialize, that's when you realize the harm is real. The courtroom was quiet, except for the clacking of the court reporter's keys. Melissa changed direction. Christine, there has been mention of medical costs. What's that about? Christine's face hardened. Yes, Truly did have a health scare 2 years ago. She was in the hospital for a few days. I went every hour. Kody went once. He was there for 20 minutes. He explained that he had a meeting to return to. I covered most of the bills myself. I didn't speak up at the time because I was still trying to maintain the peace. But I was furious. And hurt. And I discovered I was parenting by myself already. Kody's attorney jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation about Mr. Brown's motives. The judge peered over the tops of her glasses. Sustained. Mrs. Brown, stay with facts. Christine nodded. Fact, he visited once. Fact, I paid the bills. Fact, I was alone. The raw presentation created a ripple in the room. Melissa stepped forward, dropping her voice just a notch, pulling Christine into the heart of her emotional testimony. Christine, can you describe the moment when you realized your marriage was over? Christine's eyes welled up. It was a night shortly after Truly's birthday. She said, Mom, why does Dad not come around anymore? I could not tell her, not without hurting her. So I lied. I said he was busy, that he loved her. But deep down, I knew the truth. He had chosen a different life, a life where we were not included anymore. She hesitated, swallowing hard. That night, I said I would not let her grow up believing love was something that neglected you. Someone sniffled in the gallery. The judge looked in the direction of the sound, but let Christine proceed. Melissa let her catch her breath, then asked, Christine, what do you seek from this court today? Christine straightened in her seat. I'm asking for stability for my daughter, for a custody arrangement that ensures she isn't an afterthought, for financial support that matches the reality of her needs, and for a legal acknowledgement that she deserves both parents, even if one of them has to be reminded of that. The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Melissa glanced at the judge. No further questions at this time. The judge addressed Kody's lawyer. Cross-examination. He stood, fastening his jacket. Mrs. Brown, isn't it true that you've discouraged your children from spending time with their father? Christine's head jerked up. No, I've discouraged them from getting hurt. There's a difference. He walked slowly. But you have been negative about him in front of the children, haven't you? Christine shook her head. I've answered their questions honestly. If that's negative, then maybe the problem isn't my answers. It's the truth. Kody's attorney tried a different angle. You claim Mr. Brown favored one household. Could it be that his presence there was due to that household having younger children at the time? Christine did not falter. All of our children were once young, and all of them required their father. Some of them simply quit asking when they knew he would not be coming. The attorney pushed more aggressively, but Christine did not crack. She responded to every question with measured composure, never raising her voice, never permitting herself to be provoked to anger. After the cross-examination, Christine left the stand and went back to her seat, still standing tall. She did not glance Kody's way as she walked by him, but for one fleeting moment he gazed at her. A hard, impassive stare, as if seeking out the woman he used to know behind the determination she now wore like armor. The judge requested a brief recess. Christine exited into the hallway, accompanied by her attorney. Camera flashes illuminated through glass doors as reporters pushed to catch her look. She didn't offer much. A fleeting calculated smile and a direct path ahead. Within the courtroom, Kody shifted toward his attorney, his tone low but strained. "We need to strike harder," he told her. Robyn reached out to touch his arm, but he drew away slightly, his gaze still fastened on the door through which Christine had just passed. For no matter how much he would try to play it off, everyone in the room understood Christine's testimony had hit, and it had hit hard. When the recess was over, the courtroom was different. Christine's testimony still hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Strong, lasting, inescapable. Even some of the gallery goers who had entered neutral now seemed to be swayed to her side. Kody knew it. His attorney knew it. So when Judge Amelia Carter brought the court back to order and asked the defense to make their case, Kody's lawyer, Thomas Weaver, stood up with the bracing vigor of a man eager to draw blood. "Your Honor," Weaver began, "we've just heard a very emotional account from Mrs. Brown. But emotional does not mean accurate. My client is here today to set the record straight, not just for himself, but for his relationship with his daughter truly." Kody rose and walked to the witness stand. His walk was deliberate, but if you notice closely, there was a stiffness in his shoulders, a glimmer of apprehension in his eyes. He swore on oath, sat down, and leaned forward toward the microphone. Weaver walked up. "Kody, in your own words, how would you describe your role as a father over the years?" Kody hesitated. "Not at all. I have always loved my children. All of them. I have done my best to be there for them in every possible way. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. But Christine has made it hard. She has erected barriers between me and the children, particularly." Christine remained motionless at the plaintiff's table, her gaze fixed on Kody, but her face impassive. Weaver went on. "What do you mean by walls?" Kody's tone grew more biting. "She's spoken about me in terms that poison my children against me. She said I don't care, that I've left them behind. It's not true. I've called, I've requested to see them, I've tried to be there, and I've been locked out." Behind him, Robyn shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her eyes flicking in the direction of the judge as if wishing silently for him to be believed. Weaver addressed the judge. "Your Honor, we will have phone records, emails and texts that indicate Mr. Brown has repeatedly tried to get engaged, but was frequently met with refusal or outright denial." The judge nodded, indicating that he should go on. Kody leaned forward, his voice hardening. "The notion that I preferred one home over another, that is not true. I did spend more time at Robyn's house. She had younger children who required me to be physically present more often. It did not mean I loved my other children any less. It meant I was where the need was the greatest." Christine's attorney stood. "Objection, argumentative." "Sustained," Judge Carter stated firmly. "Mr. Brown, stay on facts." Kody clamped his lips together, resisting the urge to speak out. "Fact, I supported all my children. I ensured they had roofs over their heads, food and opportunities. Fact, I covered school fees, activities and medical bills whenever I was told of them. If I was not made aware, I couldn't assist." Weaver moved another step closer. "Kody, please respond to the accusation that you forgot Truly's 11th birthday." Kody groaned. "I did not attend the party, but I did call her the day after, and I did send a present. I was not there because I did not care. I had a commitment conflict, something unavoidable. But Christine did what she always does and made it into evidence that I did not love my daughter, which is just not the case." From the gallery, there began again that low murmur. Weaver nodded and veered from his path. "Let's discuss property. There's been some talk of assets in Flagstaff. Can you clarify your issues there?" Kody stood up. "Yes. Christine made property decisions without me, despite the property having been jointly purchased. She sold off one tract of land without asking me. She also made money moves that impacted the entire family without discussing with me. That's not only unfair, it's questionable in terms of the law." Weaver let the statement hang for a moment before speaking again. "And custody, what is your position on custody of Truly?" Kody's tone relaxed a bit. "I want to be a part of her life. I don't want her to grow up believing I don't care. I want joint custody so both parents are involved. I'm not here to remove her from Christine. I'm here to prevent her from losing her father. For an instant, the room altered, Kody's words hitting with enough reality to have some of those in attendance look at one another. But soon Christine's attorney stood for cross-examination. Melissa Carter strode to the center of the room, her heels clicking on the shiny wood floor. Her voice was measured but had an undercurrent. "Mr. Brown," she began, "you indicate you've been excluded. How many times during the last year did you actually go to Christine's house to see Truly?" Kody paused. "A couple of times." Melissa's eyebrow rose. "Be specific." Kody shifted. "3, possibly 4." Melissa slowly nodded. "3 or 4 times in an entire year. And yet you're saying that you have been putting a consistent effort to be present in her life." Kody bridled. "I called. I texted." Melissa turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we will show phone records establishing that for the past 6 months, Mr. Brown placed exactly 5 calls to Truly, all under 5 minutes." Kody's attorney protested, but the judge permitted the evidence. The clerk released the records. Melissa continued. "You also said you weren't aware of some expenses. Did you ever inquire? Did you ask for invoices or updates?" Kody hesitated once more. "I figured Christine would inform me." Melissa's voice grew harder. "So you figured, as opposed to taking an active role in your daughter's daily needs." Kody clamped his jaw together. "That's not fair." Melissa cut in, her voice crisp. "Mr. Brown, fairness is for the court to decide. I'm asking about actions, not feelings." The tension was thick enough to cut. Melissa took one final step. "You've said you want shared custody. Can you tell this court the last time you attended one of Truly's school events?" Kody's eyes darted briefly toward Robyn before returning to Melissa. "It's been a while." Melissa's voice was close to a whisper, but it cut through the room. "It's been more than 2 years, hasn't it?" Kody didn't respond at first. When he did, it was so quiet that she almost couldn't hear him. "Yes." The judge wrote down another note. Melissa took a step back. "No further questions." Kody sat down again, his face set, his hands clenched around the table edge. For the first time today, the self-assured patriarch seemed small. But before the judge could call the next witness, Kody leaned over toward his attorney, speaking sharply in a whisper. Thomas Weaver nodded and stood up. "Your Honor, we have rebuttal evidence to present concerning the sale by Mrs. Brown of jointly held property and instances of denied visitation. We feel that these prove a pattern of behavior aimed at reducing my client's role as a father." The judge offered to read it later, but the impact was evident. Kody wasn't going out of this battle quietly. As the court recessed for the day, Christine led the way, her head held high. Kody trailed behind her a few minutes later, Robyn beside him, his face impassive. Outside, reporters mobbed once more, yelling questions regarding the day's evidence. Neither party responded, but any observer with an eye could tell, this was not merely a custody case anymore. This was a war over who would narrate the downfall of their family. The following morning, the courtroom was packed before the judge even came in. The day before's testimony, Christine's unvarnished truth, Kody's combative counterattack, had built toward what everyone knew could be the biggest boom day yet. Today, it would not just be their words against one another's. Today, outside voices, experts, records, and documented facts would take center stage. Judge Carter arrived immediately at 9 a.m., her robe flapping as she sat down. She looked briefly at each side before addressing the bailiff. "Call the first witness." The door swung open and a woman in her early 50s entered. Her neat, short haircut and tailored navy suit made her look like a woman who could glare down a hurricane without flinching. She introduced herself as Dr. Elaine Murphy, court-appointed custody evaluator with more than 20 years of experience in high-conflict family cases. Melissa Carter, Christine's lawyer, walked over. "Dr. Murphy, you've interviewed both parents and the child in this case, haven't you?" "Yes," Dr. Murphy said. "I interviewed Mrs. Brown, Mr. Brown, and their daughter Truly. I also observed communications, visitation records, and school reports." Melissa nodded. "What were your main findings about the child's emotional state?" Dr. Murphy's tone was composed, but the words had forceful quietness. "Truly had a very close relationship with her mother,
calling her the safe places in her life. She also mentioned that interactions with her father are limited and at times stressful. She mentioned, and I quote, "I like it when mom is happy. She's happy when dad isn't yelling." A hush fell over the courtroom. Christine's hands tightened in her lap, and Kody's face flushed. Robyn shifted uncomfortably behind him. Melissa leaned in. "In your professional opinion, what does that statement indicate?" Dr. Murphy brought her hands together. "It indicates that the child has linked her mother's emotional health to conflict not being present with her father. Although it does not necessarily indicate direct harm, it is a sign of tension in the co-parenting relationship and the child's sense of safety." Kody's lawyer stood up to cross-examine. "Dr. Murphy, is it true that Mrs. Brown has criticized Mr. Brown in front of the children?" Dr. Murphy didn't blink. "I am aware of accusations to that effect, yes. But my conclusions were drawn from the child's direct statements and observable behavior during the evaluation, not only from parental complaints." The attorney pressed, "Couldn't the child's impression be guided by Mrs. Brown's words?" Dr. Murphy nodded. "Influence is always a factor. Yet consistency in the child's accounts over several interviews implies these impressions are founded on her experiential life, not superficial influence." As Dr. Murphy resumed her seat, the weight of her words hung as an immovable shadow. Mark Johnson, a financial forensic accountant who was retained to examine the Browns' joint assets and expenditures, was the second witness. His testimony would dispel the emotional haze with hard figures that would either exonerate or destroy. Melissa started. "Mr. Johnson, what was uncovered in your examination of the Browns' accounts?" Johnson adjusted his glasses. "I reviewed the past 5 years of their combined financial activity, including real estate holdings, earnings from their television show, and child-rearing related expenses. My observations show that Mrs. Brown paid for about 78% of Truly's direct costs for the last 2 years. This covers education expenses, healthcare, and after-school activities." Melissa tilted her head. "And Mr. Brown's contribution?" Johnson reviewed his pages. "Much less consistent. There were months with no contributions recorded at all. And then he had wholesale sums that came in only after Mrs. Brown sent him a request for money. On average over time it worked out to around 22% of the child's costs." The gallery gasped. Kody's jaw set hard. He was whispering sharply to his attorney. On cross-examination, Weaver attempted to regain ground. "Mr. Johnson, isn't it true that some of Mr. Brown's contributions were not put in writing because they were given in cash or to service providers directly?" Johnson shrugged. "Possible, but without receipts or records, they can't be proved. Financial responsibility is a significant consideration in custody determinations." The punch had been struck. But the worst moment of the day was still to come. Melissa phoned Dr. Karen Willis, a family therapist who worked temporarily with the Browns at the beginning of their breakup. Dr. Willis's gentle demeanor did not hide the gravity of what she bore. "Dr. Willis," Melissa started, "may I have your impressions from your sessions with Mr. and Mrs. Brown?" Doctor Willis nodded. "Yes, in my therapy with him it became apparent there was a pattern of selective engagement on the part of Mr. Brown. That is, he engaged in some parts of family life selectively, sometimes deciding where and when to be emotionally present." Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Selective engagement?" "Yes," replied Dr. Willis. "For instance, Mr. Brown was very involved in happenings and activities at one home while restricting his involvement in the other homes. This was observed not only by Mrs. Brown but also by the children themselves in family sessions." Kody's attorney leapt to his feet. "Objection, hearsay on the part of the children." Judge Carter overruled him. "It's admissible as part of the therapist's professional opinion." Melissa continued. "And how did this impact the children truly in particular?" Dr. Willis's eyes softened. "Children pick up when a parent is regularly absent or less attentive. It can bring about feelings of rejection and self-downing. Truly, in fact, voiced concern that her father did not like being around her as much as the other kids." Christine folded her hands and looked down, her mouth clamped shut, battling tears. Kody sat forward, his face a mask, but his hold on the table tightening. Weaver's cross-examination was aggressive, attempting to destroy Dr. Willis's credibility. Doctor, isn't it possible that Mrs. Brown's own dissatisfaction had an effect on the perceptions of the children? Dr. Willis replied in an assertive tone. Possible, but improbable in this instance. Children's observations were consistent, specific, and supported by Mr. Brown's own confessions during our session. By the time Dr. Willis exited the stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom had totally changed. The solemnity of expert testimony, supported by papers and straight quotes from Truly, had accomplished what Christine's own words were unable to. It had constructed an impenetrable wall of evidence that was much more difficult to break. Melissa stood. Your Honor, we also have exhibit photos, attendance records from school, and birthday party invitations documenting frequent absences by Mr. Brown at milestone events in his daughter's life.
The clerk projected the photographs on the court monitors. Truly science fair with Christine proudly standing next to her, a soccer game with an empty seat where her father could have been, a play at the middle school where her eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for someone who never materialized. Kody's gaze remained on the desktop in front of him. The judge scanned her papers. We will adjourn for today and resume tomorrow for closing statements. I will study the evidence filed for tonight. As the gavel fell, Christine let out a tiny sigh, releasing the breath she'd been holding since morning. Kody rose slowly, his expression a mask that gave nothing away, but his eyes for an instant flashed with something akin to panic rather than rebellion. The crowd surged out into the corridor, full of rumor and conjecture. The waiting hordes of reporters in the lobby were poised, cameras clicking, microphones thrust. But the reality was, nobody required an official announcement to notice what was going on. The tide had shifted, and it wasn't in favor of Kody. The last day of the hearing opened up under a sky divided between light and darkness, the Flagstaff Mountains powdered with pale morning snow. It was as if the weather could not make up its mind to provide serenity or tempest, a perfect reflection of what lay in store for courtroom 3. The courtroom was filled when Christine arrived. She glided with quiet self-assurance, her deep green dress on the first day back out again, a quiet declaration that her battle for her daughter had come full circle. She smiled at Melissa Carter, her attorney, who offered a reassuring half-smile. Kody arrived a few minutes after him, his pace slower than on previous days. He was wearing a crisp navy suit, but his eyes were puffy. Robyn followed him, her grip tight on a small folder, and her eyes fixed ahead, avoiding any glance towards Christine. Judge Amelia Carter brought the court to order, her voice crisp but not unfriendly. We will hear closing arguments from both sides before I deliberate and render a ruling. Counsel, you are on. Melissa's closing argument, Christine's last word in court. Melissa stood up, making her way to the middle of the courtroom. She did not glance at her notes. She gazed directly at the judge, her voice firm. Your Honor, this case has never been about punishment. It's about protection. Protection of a child's right to consistency, stability, and love that is not conditional or selective. Over the past several days, you've heard the testimony. You've seen the evidence. Christine Brown has carried the bulk of the responsibility for raising Truly, emotionally, financially, and physically. This is not an accusation born from bitterness. This is a truth, supported by written records, testimony, and even the words of the child herself. Melissa nodded toward Christine. My client does not want to remove Mr. Brown from his daughter's life. She only wants the court to acknowledge what the reality has been. That Truly's well-being has been maintained most of all by her mother, and that any custody plan must be based on that truth. We request primary custody, reasonable visitation, and a structured financial contribution that will make this child never have to wonder if her needs will be taken care of. Her voice dipped in emotion. Your Honor, kids remember who comes, and kids remember who doesn't. Melissa sat down, her last words lingering. Weaver's closing argument, Kody's last chance. Thomas Weaver stood up slowly, fastening his jacket. He moved deliberately, halting to catch the judge's eye before he spoke. Your Honor, no parent is perfect. There has been error on both sides. But to portray Mr. Brown as an absent father, is to disavow the realities of a plural family, the logistical difficulties, and the emotional burden of living in multiple homes. He has been a provider, a mentor, and contrary to suggestion otherwise, a steady presence when given the opportunity. Weaver's tone grew more pointed. We think that Mrs. Brown has, either consciously or unconsciously, created an atmosphere that has made life more complicated for Mr. Brown. Shared custody is the only solution to mend and rebuild this relationship. This isn't about a mother's desires or a father's protection, it's about a child's right to be familiar with both parents equally. He ended with a stern glance at Melissa. We request that this court provide truly with that opportunity. Judge's deliberation. Judge Carter sat back a little farther in her chair, her hands folded together in front of her. The room was silent, the kind of silent that presses upon your ears. She started slowly. I have heard patiently from both sides. I have read the testimony, the evidence, and the expert analyses. It is not a question of giving favor to one parent over another. It is a question of finding out what will be best for the child. Her eyes moved from Kody to Christine. Mr. Brown, it is obvious that you love your daughter. It is also obvious that your availability in her life has been spotty over the last few years. There may be reasons for that, but the effect on the child is still great. Mrs. Brown has been the main caregiver and has been the stabilizing force. Kody's jaw clenched. Christine remained immobile, her arms tightly clasped in her lap. The judge went on. I am granting primary physical custody to Mrs. Brown, with visitation every other weekend by schedule to Mr. Brown, together with shared holidays. Mr. Brown will also pay the child's share in the amount set by this court according to income documents. The words hung in the air. Christine's shoulders shifted hardly at all, whereas Kody's face hardened. The emotional aftermath. No one moved for an instant. The gavel hadn't fallen yet, but the verdict was already evident. Judge Carter continued. Both parents are to undergo co-parenting counseling, and any statements derogatory towards the other parent in front of the child will be considered a violation of this order. Then the gavel fell. Christine breathed out, her eyes brimming but smile mastered. She took Melissa's hand, giving it a squeeze of thanks. Around her there were some subdued cheers from spectators in the gallery. Slowly Kody got up, his tie being adjusted though it didn't require it. Robyn moved closer, whispering something, but his gaze remained on Christine as if he wished to utter something, anything that could reverse what had just occurred. Christine picked up her folder and rose, not looking at him. As she moved toward the door, the corridor beyond filled with the voices of reporters, flashes of camera shutters snapping in quick succession. One yelled, Christine, what do you have to say about the verdict? She replied in a steady, measured tone, relieved, ready to move ahead. Another called out, Kody, fair or not? He didn't respond. He elbowed through the throng, Robyn following close behind, both vanishing into the waiting SUV. A family forever altered. That evening, Flagstaff was subdued. Snow kept falling in light flakes, covering roofs and filling the streets. But within the Brown homes, the truth was anything but tranquil. Christine sat at her kitchen table, listening to the sound of Truly's laughter coming from the living room, as she played a board game with one of her older sisters. The sound was balm to Christine's heart. She understood that there would still be difficult moments ahead, clumsy handoffs, anxious moments, but for the first time in years, she felt like she had made a foundation for her daughter's future. In town, Kody sat in his office, the court's words echoing in his head. He reassured himself, it wasn't finished, that he could repair his bond with Truly, but underlying the resolve was a truer reality he couldn't shake. He had lost not only a case, but the unchallenged place he once had in his family. The decision hadn't merely drawn a legal distinction. It had fashioned a deep, irreparable crack in the Browns' shaky foundation. And though court decrees might determine custody schedules and financial responsibilities, they couldn't legislate presence, trust, or love. Those would have to be earned. And for Kody, the route to earning them had never seemed more daunting. For Christine, it was triumph with a measure of realism. For Kody, it was reckoning. And for Truly, it was the possibility that the adults in her life would finally put her above their conflict.